Hello, you're watching Movie Snapshot Scenes, and this is the summary of Pacific Rim by Guillermo del Toro. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The world was never ready for what came through the breach. It was 2013 when the first Kaiju, a monstrous behemoth from the depths of the Pacific Ocean, tore through the Golden Gate Bridge like it was paper. They called it Trespasser, a hulking nightmare with claws that shredded steel and a roar that shook the earth. San Francisco crumbled in 6 days of chaos. Thousands died, and humanity realized it wasn't alone anymore. These weren't aliens from the stars. They were from beneath, us, rising from a rift in the ocean floor, a portal to another dimension. Scientists scrambled to understand it, naming it the breach, while governments panicked. Conventional weapons barely scratched Trespasser. It took 3 cities and countless lives before a barrage of missiles finally brought it down. But that was just the beginning. Months later, another Kaiju emerged. Bigger, meaner, faster. Then another, and another. They kept coming, each one different, each one deadlier, like nature's twisted answer to our dominance. Cities burned, Sydney, Manila, Los Angeles, names etched into a growing tombstone of civilization. The world's leaders realized this wasn't a war they could win with jets or tanks. They needed something new, something massive. Enter the Jaeger program. Engineers and dreamers collaborated to build giants of our own. Towering robots, piloted by humans, designed to punch Kaiju in the face and win. The first Jaegers were crude but effective. Metal titans like Gipsy Danger, piloted by pairs of Rangers synced through a neural bridge called the Drift, where minds melded to control the machine. For a while, it worked. Jaegers became legends. Crowds cheered as pilots like Raleigh Becket and his brother Yancey took down monsters in brutal, earth-shaking brawls. Kaiju fell, cities were saved, and humanity dared to hope. But the breach didn't stop. The Kaiju adapted, growing smarter, stronger, more frequent. What started as a rare event became a relentless siege. By 2020, the Jaegers were losing ground, pilots were dying, and the world's faith in the program wavered. The Pacific Rim, once a bustling trade hub, turned into a battleground, a line in the sand between us and annihilation. And deep below, the breach pulsed, whispering promises of worse to come. The Jaeger program was humanity's shining shield, but by 2025, that shield was cracking. The Kaiju weren't just monsters anymore, they were a calculated assault, each one a new weapon forged by whatever lurked beyond the breach. The early victories faded into memory as losses piled up. Raleigh Becket, once a golden boy of the program, knew this better than anyone. 5 years ago, he and his brother Yancey piloted Gipsy Danger against Knifehead, a Kaiju with serrated claws and a cunning that caught them off guard. The fight was brutal, waves crashing over Gypsy's hull as the brothers synced in the drift, a mind-melding bond where every fear, every memory was shared. They were winning until Knifehead tore into Gypsy's side, ripping Yancey out of the cockpit. Raleigh felt his brother's death through the drift, a scream that echoed in his skull as he finished the fight alone, dragging Gypsy's broken frame to shore. That night broke him. Raleigh quit, disappearing into the shadows of a world falling apart. The Jaeger program faltered without heroes like him. Governments, desperate and disillusioned, turned to a new plan. The Wall of Life, a massive coastal barrier to keep the Kaiju out. Jaegers were sidelined, deemed too costly, too fragile against the escalating threat. But the Kaiju didn't care about walls. They smashed through them like toys, proving the politicians wrong and leaving the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps, PPDC, scrambling. Enter Stacker Pentecost, the grizzled marshal who'd bled for the program since day one. He refused to let the Jaegers die. From a hidden base in Hong Kong called the Shatterdome, he rallied the last of the fleet. Gipsy Danger, the aging brawler, Cherno Alpha, Russia's hulking tank, Crimson Typhoon, China's triple-armed whirlwind, and Striker Eureka, Australia's sleek powerhouse. Pentecost knew the war wasn't over. It was evolving. He tracked Raleigh down, finding him hauling, scrap on the wall, a shell of the man he'd been. "We're not done yet," Pentecost growled, his voice a lifeline. Raleigh hesitated, haunted by Yancey's ghost in his mind, but the drift called him back. The world was running out of time, and the Shatterdome was its last stand. The Hong Kong Shatterdome buzzed with the clang of metal and the hum of desperation. It was 2025, and the last Jaegers stood like battered sentinels in their bays, dwarfed by the cavernous base carved into the city's edge. Raleigh Becket stepped. Inside, the familiar scent of oil and solder hitting him like a punch. Stacker Pentecost had dragged him back, but the ghosts of the drift lingered. Every step echoed with Yancey's voice, every shadow a reminder of Knifehead's claws. The world outside was crumbling. Kaiju attacks doubled in frequency, tearing through coastal defenses, while the wall of life proved as useless as wet cardboard. The PPDC was on its last legs, and Pentecost's rogue operation was all that stood between humanity and the abyss. Raleigh wasn't alone in the fight. The Shatterdome housed a motley crew of rangers and misfits. Herc Hansen and his son Chuck piloted Striker Eureka, their bond strained by pride and grief after losing Chuck's mother to a kaiju years back. The Wei triplets, Jin, Hu, and Chung, commanded Crimson Typhoon with balletic precision, their three-armed Jaeger a whirlwind of blades. Sasha and Alexis Kaidanovsky, a stoic Russian duo, manned Cherno Alpha, a walking fortress built to take punishment and dish it out. Then there was Mako Mori, Pentecost's adopted daughter, a quiet genius with a fire in her eyes. She'd trained to pilot Gipsy Danger, rebuilding it piece by piece, but Pentecost cast a shadow over her. Raleigh saw it the moment they met. She was drift compatible with him, a perfect match, but Pentecost forbade her from fighting, hiding, a secret that gnawed at her. The team wasn't just metal and muscle, they had brains too. Dr. Newton Geisler, a manic kaiju nerd, and Hermann Gottlieb, a prickly mathematician, worked in the lab, decoding the breach. Newt believed the kaiju were engineered, linked by a hive mind, while Hermann mapped the rift's patterns. Their bickering masked a breakthrough. The breach was stabilizing, and the next attack would be catastrophic. Pentecost unveiled his plan: drop a nuke into the breach and collapse it. But first, they needed Gipsy ready. Raleigh and Mako's test run in the drift sparked chaos. Her trauma from a kaiju attack as a child nearly fried their link. They survived, barely, proving they could fight. Time was ticking. The kaiju were coming, and the Shatterdome braced for war. The air in Hong Kong crackled with tension as the Shatterdome's alarm screamed to life. It was late 2025, and the breach had spat out not one, but two kaiju. Leatherback, a gorilla-like brute with an EMP pulse, and Otachi, a winged serpent with acid dripping from its jaws. The double event was unprecedented, a gut punch to the PPDC's dwindling hope. Pentecost deployed the Jaegers. Striker Eureka, Cherno Alpha, and Crimson Typhoon roared into the night, their pilots' nerves steeled for battle. Raleigh and Mako, still shaky from their drift test, stayed back. Gipsy Danger wasn't cleared yet. From the control room, they watched the feeds, hearts pounding as the ocean churned with monstrous silhouettes. The fight was a disaster from the start. Leatherback's EMP blasted through the city, frying Crimson Typhoon's systems. Otachi swooped in, its tail piercing the Jaeger's cockpit, silencing the Wei triplets in a spray of glass and blood. Cherno Alpha charged, fists hammering Leatherback, but Otachi's acid melted through its armor, forcing Sasha and Alexis into a desperate retreat. Striker Eureka, fast and lethal, landed blows, but the kaiju were relentless. Then Otachi took flight, snatching Cherno in its claws and dropping it into the sea. The Russian signal flatlined. Herc and Chuck fought on, crippling Leatherback, but Otachi vanished into the storm, leaving Striker battered. The Shatterdome reeled. 2 Jaegers down, a city exposed, and a grim truth sinking in. The kaiju were evolving faster than they could counter. Back at base, chaos reigned. Newt, wild-eyed, proposed an insane idea. Drift with a kaiju brain to learn its secrets. Against Herman's protests, he did it, linking with a fragment of Itachi's mind. The flood of alien memories nearly broke him. Flashes of a dark dimension, the precursors, masters crafting kaiju to terraform Earth. Newt gasped it out. The breach was a gate, and they were losing the war. Pentecost, stone-faced, green-lit Gipsy Danger despite the risks. Raleigh and Mako stepped into the cockpit, their drift steadying as her resolve hardened. Itachi returned, pregnant and enraged, spitting acid at Hong Kong's skyline. Gipsy charged, fists blazing, tearing into the beast. They killed it, but Leatherback loomed and Striker was limping. The endgame was near. Humanity's last titans faced a rising tide of monsters. The streets of Hong Kong smoldered as Gipsy Danger stood over Itachi's corpse, its metal fists dripping with ichor. It was 2025, and the night wasn't over. Leatherback roared back into the fray, its EMP-deadened bulk a wall of rage. Raleigh and Mako, synced tight in the drift, met it head-on. Gipsy's plasma cannon scorched the beast, but it kept coming, slamming them into skyscrapers. Striker Eureka limped in, Herc and Chuck defiant despite the damage. Together, they brought Leatherback down, a brutal dance of steel and fury, ending with Gipsy's sword slicing its skull. The city cheered, but the victory was hollow. Cherno Alpha and Crimson Typhoon were gone, and the breach pulsed stronger than ever. In the Shatterdome, Newt's drift with the kaiju brain paid off. The precursors were accelerating their invasion, and the next attack would be apocalyptic. Herman's math confirmed it. 2 Category 4, Kaiju, Raiju and Scunner, were already en route, guarding a third, Slattern, the first Category 5, a colossus dwarfing all before it. Pentecost's plan crystallized. Detonate a nuke in the breach, collapse it, end the war. But the rift only opened for Kaiju DNA. Newt's link proved it. Striker Eureka would carry the bomb, with Gipsy as backup. Time was a razor's edge. The team launched at dawn, the Pacific a churning graveyard of sunken cities. Gipsy and Striker descended to the ocean floor, the breach glowing like a wound in the earth. Raiju struck first, a crocodilian blur tearing at Gipsy's arm. Scunner followed, its horns goring Striker. The Jaegers fought back, Mako's precision and Raleigh's grit holding Gipsy together as they carved through Raiju. But Slattern emerged, a towering nightmare, its tails whipping like scythes. Striker took the brunt, its hull cracking. Chuck, brash to the end, convinced Herc to bail. Pentecost, revealing a terminal illness, took Herc's place. "Those who can, fight!" he rasped, sinking with Chuck for the suicide run. Gipsy battled Slattern, buying time as Striker charged the breach. Pentecost and Chuck detonated the nuke, their sacrifice a blinding flash that shredded the Guardians. The rift flickered, but stayed open. Slattern still lived, wounded but furious. Raleigh and Mako, battered and bleeding, faced the abyss alone. The final throw was theirs. The ocean floor trembled as Slattern, the Category 5 Titan, loomed over Gipsy Danger. It was 2025, and the breach glowed below, a swirling maw of alien light mocking humanity's last stand. Striker Eureka's nuke had scorched the seabed, taking Pentecost and Chuck with it, but the rift held. Slattern's kaiju DNA kept it alive. Raleigh and Mako, battered inside Gipsy's cockpit, stared down the beast. Its tails lashed, shattering Gipsy's sword arm, but Mako's focus in the drift was unshakable. "We finished this," she hissed, her childhood terror forged into steel. Raleigh nodded, blood trickling from his nose. They were out of options, but not out of fight. Gipsy's plasma cannon roared, blasting Slattern's flank. The kaiju retaliated, slamming them into the trench wall, but Raleigh wrestled it back, pinning its neck. Mako ignited the thrusters, driving Gipsy's remaining fist through Slattern's chest. The monster screeched, black blood clouding the water, and Raleigh saw their shot. Drag the corpse to the breach. Clamping onto Slattern's body, Gipsy plunged into the rift, alarms blaring as the Jaegers systems redlined. They crossed into the Precursor's realm, a jagged hellscape of spires and glowing vats, Kaiju half-formed in the murk. The enemy stared, insectoid and ancient, as Gipsy dropped its payload. The reactor core, rigged to blow. Oxygen failing, Raleigh overrode the escape pods. Mako's ejected first, her vitals fading as she surfaced. He stayed, guiding Gipsy deeper, the core ticking down. The precursors lunged, but the explosion erupted, a white-hot cataclysm swallowing their world. The breach collapsed, its lights snuffing out. Above, Mako floated in her pod, gasping awake, as silence fell over the Pacific. Raleigh's pod breached the waves moments later, lifeless. She pounded its hatch, tears mixing with seawater, until he coughed, alive. They clung to each other, adrift but unbroken. Back on shore, the Shatterdome crew watched the horizon, Herman, Newt, Herc, hardly believing the war was over. The Kaiju were gone, the breach sealed, paid for in blood and steel. Raleigh and Mako, the last Rangers, stood as proof. Humanity could face the abyss and claw its way back. The Pacific Rim was quiet again, but its scars whispered of giants, Jaegers and monsters, locked forever in legend.